Anatomy 32, Chapter 22, the Endocrine System. Topics: Endocrine System Overview and the Hypothalamus. So the endocrine system is a collection of glands and organs and cells that all do one thing, and that is produce hormones. However, those hormones can have a lot of different functions. So this is a bit of a scattered, random collection of structures that don't always connect directly to each other. So again, it's hormones that all of these structures produce, and the hormones are needed to coordinate body activities. And it turns out there are additional non-endocrine organs that also produce hormones that don't fall under the category of endocrine systems, such as the heart, small intestines, kidney, liver, stomach, skin. So hormones are very important for the functioning of the body. So glands. Many of the structures in the endocrine system are glands, which are made up of epithelial tissue, and they secrete a substance. Exocrine glands have a duct to a surface, and they secrete materials that go into that surface, such as sweat from sweat glands, saliva from salivary glands, and so on. Endocrine glands, on the other hand, do not have a duct, and they produce hormones, and they excrete those hormones either into the interstitial fluid surrounding the gland or directly into the bloodstream. Now, there are three main ways that endocrine glands can be stimulated. One is humoral stimulus. So this is where the gland is observing the conditions in the bloodstream, some specific condition in the bloodstream, and when that condition changes and veers away from normal, the gland will then be stimulated and release its hormones. So an example here is the parathyroid hormones. They are paying attention to calcium levels in the bloodstream, and when calcium levels get low, that will stimulate them to produce the parathyroid hormone. There's also neurostimulus. Neurostimulus is as you described. It is a direct impulse from the central nervous system to the gland, and then that signal is what stimulates the release of the hormones. So an example for that is the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine from the adrenal medulla. It's controlled by nerve stimulus. And then the third way is via hormonal stimulus. So one structure releases hormones that then causes another structure to act. This is also relatively common in the endocrine system. So for instance, the hypothalamus can secrete hormones that then stimulate the anterior pituitary gland to either release or stop releasing hormones, and so on. All right, function of hormones. Well, the big thing is homeostasis, is maintaining a stable internal environment. So hormones can regulate a wide range of things. It can regulate the chemical composition and volume of fluids, especially blood and cerebrospinal fluid. It can help regulate the metabolism and energy balance in the body, how much energy cells are using, how fast it's being used. They also can lead to contractions in hollow organs, constriction, dilation. Hormones can also lead to glandular secretions, lead to other glands releasing hormones. And some hormones also have an immune function, especially in helping immune cells to properly develop or to be stimulated to act. Hormones can also control growth and development, helping the infant grow to the size of an adult and at the same time develop. So we're not just seeing a 5 to 6 foot tall infant, but it's actually now an adult body. And hormones can regulate the reproductive systems to help control and regulate the production and release of things like oocytes, sperm, and also regulate the lining of the uterus so that the coordination of when an oocyte is present near the uterus corresponds to when the uterus would be able to accept an embryo for implantation. And finally, hormones can affect circadian rhythms. This is our sleep-wake cycle. So it helps us know when to become sleepy based on external cues, as well as cause the various changes in the body that make us actually sleepy. And there are a variety of other effects hormones can have that aren't completely included in this list. All right, the endocrine system has the important role of the hypothalamus, which we know is part of the brain, part of the diencephalon of the brain. The hypothalamus is become known as the master controller of the endocrine system, and this is because the hypothalamus is the major integrating link between the nervous system, which also controls many functions in the body, and the endocrine system. And the hypothalamus does this in a few different ways, with one big way being affecting the pituitary gland, which then can affect many other structures in the endocrine system. So here is a view of the pituitary gland. It turns out the pituitary gland is actually two separate endocrine structures that happen to be located in the same space. So one apartment with two roommates. So you have the anterior pituitary gland and the posterior pituitary gland. And these two glands connect via the infundibulum to the hypothalamus. So it's really close to the hypothalamus up in the cranial cavity. The hypothalamus is able to control what occurs in the anterior pituitary gland through the release of hormones. So the hypothalamus will release hormones into the bloodstream. They will go down to the anterior pituitary gland. And they can cause two main functions, either releasing hormones that lead to the release of a specific hormone in the anterior pituitary gland, or inhibiting hormones that suppress the release of hormones by the anterior pituitary gland. So for instance, the growth hormone releasing hormone produced by the hypothalamus would stimulate the anterior pituitary gland to produce the growth hormone. Now, hormones that affect the release of hormones in other structures are referred to as tropic hormones. So tropic hormones are hormones that control the activities of other endocrine structures. So these hormones produced by the hypothalamus that affect the anterior pituitary gland are all tropic hormones. And again, as you can see by this blood vessel arrangement, we have a portal system. Specifically, this is referred to as the hypophyseal portal system. And a portal system is where you have two capillary beds connected by veins. So we have two capillary beds, one around the hypothalamus, one around the anterior pituitary gland, that are connected by veins, making for an easy and quick transfer of hormones from the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary gland. And that is it for this part of chapter 22.